Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So oh boy, today we have a juicy bit of video that I definitely wish as many people as possible can view, because quite frankly once upon I came this realization, it just kind of made me feel relatively disgusting inside. Disgusting for the fact that I play the game for people that would do that, as in effectively Kabam's lovely collective. Right, and I'm not going to be pulling any punches, man. I'm super pissed off, and there's a good reason to it. And before I actually get to the main bombshell, I do need to tell you guys a bit of a backstory, but please do not skip over it, because all of it's important, all of it's relevant, and all of it just adds up to the main point and main kind of like problem that I see in today's video. So, let me just change the scene in a second. One second, I need to pop into my album. There we go. And yeah, let's jump here. So Act 7 beta has come live, and obviously there are a lot of complaints about the Act 7 beta in particular, but one of the lanes that I mentioned in my previous video that could technically turn out to be quite fun is the Icarus buffed up EMP modification lane, because Icarus always kind of like brings for a good time. EMP modification, however, is one of the most horrible nodes in general, but I did still manage to kind of like come through to some decent options, possibly for many of the matchups there, like I know Corvus, your Gladiator Hulk, dealing with the EMP modification, so on and so forth. But during my yesterday's stream, when I was discussing this with my subscribers, I kind of realized that Mole Man would fit perfectly for this EMP modification node, and it actually kind of pretty much seems that the entire lane is designed more or less for Mole Man to accent his strengths, because EMP modification is not an issue for Mole Man because he's shock immune, and now buffed up will be taken care of by Icarus, but also Icarus will place consistently debuffs on Mole Man, which Mole Man will shrug off because there are no mutant champions on the lane, and that will give him his monster mass, and he's going to reach critical mass, and he's going to be critting on every single hit that he lands with all of that increased attack with those fury buffs. So effectively, in theory, I haven't had a chance or ability to test it, but Mole Man should be able to pretty much tear through this lane like a hot knife through butter, and that obviously acts as the idea that Kabam is making content specifically for new champions and keeping new champions in mind, and even making kind of like the more worthless champions that they have released this year. And boy, oh boy, they have fucked up so many champions this year, and they are just horrible. But still, obviously under the right conditions, they can perform decently, and I think this is kind of like the prelude of what's to come, that the nodes will be specifically tuned to the champions that have been released most recently, therefore you have to go and get them, kind of thing. Right, and obviously, if done properly, this might not necessarily be the end of the world. This is kind of like understandable thing that they have always done, right? Because there are a lot of content that just seems to favor a lot of newer champions, and that's obviously designed by purpose, but it's in itself not a problem as long as there are plenty of older champions who can also deal with that content. But that is, however, something that Kabam is not too keen on, because we don't buy crystals, we don't spend and rank up these new worse champions just so happen to fit these conditions that are needed. But again, as long as Kabam keeps it kind of like steady and gives a decent amount of options for these fights, I can understand them from business perspective, and I don't think it's all that bad. However, the bit that did make me feel disgusted with them, and specifically this fight, this Mercy node and this aspect of our fight in general, because it will basically come together. Just give me one more minute and you're gonna guys get it. The point idea, Mercy is completely new node, and the whole idea is that you need to dex, you gain a charge whenever you dex, kind of like, let's say, Starking Hand Spider-Man. Whenever you parry, you transfer these charges to your opponent, and only then you can deal actual damage. So it's, by definition, sounds like a very, very complex node to deal with, and there's gonna be an entire lane of this stuff where you just need to dex a whole bunch, then parry your opponent, and then and only then you can deal somewhat your actual damage. And that is very annoying node to begin with. However, somebody in Kabam HQ had the bright idea, and I'm going to hand my face cam here, to combine that node with Aspect of War. And Aspect of War is a node that lets opponent to go unstoppable whenever they do drop a special attack, and also eventually makes them go unblockable. Now, for those of you who didn't realize this, parry is impossible against unblockable opponents, therefore the Mercy node will by de facto never be able to activate, and you're going to be stuck dealing 10% of your actual damage at any given point past the point where opponent goes unblockable because of Aspect of War. And Aspect of War is a very tricky node to deal with to begin with. And I searched the internet, I checked Cam's tweets, I checked Seaton's live stream, and I talked to people, and basically everybody's trying to come up with possible solutions to this nightmare scenario. Bitch of a fight. So, and the hardest I thought in the morning, and I couldn't find a single good option for this fight outside of taking half an hour of my day to quake it down. And all things considered, I don't think there is currently a single champion in the game that is able to solo this fight. However, if we jump in the game, we have a new champion coming to the game, Red Guardian. And let's take a look at what are Red Guardian's abilities that coincide with, let's say, his suitability for this Sabretooth. Now, he's one of the very few champions in game that can actually block an unblockable hit. Therefore, he will be able to take advantage of No Mercy even if Aspect of War has made Sabretooth go unblockable. Additionally, he has a tool of convenience, which is slow debuff, easily accessible on his level 1 and being able to maintain for the duration of entire fight, so you don't have to worry about unstoppable, right? Additionally, his core mechanics even go as far as to kind of like benefit from this whole dexterity forceful mechanic, because he repairs his shield whenever he performs a dex, and he increases his durability stacks, which is going to be needed to parry and simultaneously stun that Sabretooth. So that is going to be also a good window for you to get in your heavy attack, to place on your damage, to refresh your slow debuffs. He has access to plenty of debuffs on opponents, so that will also mean that Despair Mastery will mitigate a lot of Sabretooth regen, just to have him an easier kind of like tailor-made time dealing with this mini-boss. Now, this mini-boss will cost hundreds if not thousands of units for each attempt, unless you have this one specific champion who effectively is tailor-made for that fight. And that is disgusting. I don't know how else to call it. They are creating a content for one specific champion that is about to be released in game. And also, whether in a move of brilliance, geniusness, they also let us know right now, before the crystals drop, that this is the champion that we're going to need if we want to be able to deal with that Sabretooth, for instance. So I don't know, man. It just felt so filthy, so dirty. Like, because we have long known that Kabam is designing nodes specifically for the newer champions that just happen to be magically rubbish, but happen to be magically useful for 1, 2, or 3 specific lanes in Act 6.3 or 6.4, for instance. For instance, terminal velocity lanes and Guillotine 2099 and stuff like that. Now, this stuff, where there's literally just the one answer, to best of my ability. Somebody might correct me, maybe there is a champion in game currently already that will be able to deal with that Sabretooth, but I generally do not think so. I think that Red Guardian is kind of like tailor-made counter for that one very specific, prominent, and important fight in Act 7. And I just hate it. I feel Kabam needs to be called upon it, because this is #1 bullshit, man. That fight will ruin the experience for hundreds if not thousands of players, because Kabam are cunts. Now, the biggest backlash they released was the Power Sting path in 6.4, I believe, where you needed pretty much Mr. Fantastic or nothing else really works, but there were some workarounds there. And I think that this time they went an extra step to make sure that there are no possible decent workarounds outside of this one man. And it sucks, man. It sucks that the company who makes such an amazing game that we all love to play are that big of a cunt selection that they would actually discuss it, design it, and go ahead to do it, because this clearly involves so many different people and everybody seems to be okay with it in Kabam's side. So sincerely, from bottom of my heart, fuck you, fuck you all for even thinking that that is a decent idea. And I guess that will be it for today's video. To cheer everybody up, here is a Baby Yoda spitting out frog, just like we ought to do with the Act 7 beta. But hey, if you didn't like the language used in this video, or if you didn't appreciate the content itself, then you can go and fuck yourself too. See you guys.